The DTRA UK Flat Track Nationals heads to its northernmost outpost in Middlesbrough. The Echo Arena, within the confines of the South Tees Motorsports Park, is the home of Redcar Speedway. We visited in 2007, 2018 and most recently in 2019. And now we're back following a reduction to the calendar over the last 2 seasons due to the global pandemic. 5 rounds are already complete in 2022. We visited Greenfield in April, Peterborough in May, Kings Lynn in June and Ammanford last month for our annual double-header. But we've had only one winner, Gary Birtwistle. He now needs just a single championship point this afternoon to claim his first national title. Birtwistle will appear here in Heat 1 and with the pole after topping qualifying ahead of Ferran Sastre and Jack Bell. 2 new additions to the lineup, taking their first outings of the afternoon in this one. Marc Seto and Eric Reverte, both regulars in the Catalan Championship, which is currently on a summer break before it gets back underway later on this month. Look at the grid in full then for heat number 1. Qualifiers on the front row of the grid finished 1st, 6th, 7th and 12th for single lap pace earlier on. Gary Birtwistle, Marc Seto, Eric Reverte and Danny Williams. Qualifiers 13th, 18th, 19th and 24th. Tim Gregg, Joseph Brindley, Fergus Bluff and Rick Owen will complete the lineup. It's our first use of the knockout format this afternoon since the opening round at the Greenfield TT, but a somewhat smaller entry today of 24 riders, so everyone's going to go through to the semi-final stages. That means that these qualifying heats, the preliminary phase of competition usually, will effectively only determine starting positions for those semis. The top 2 in each of these first 3 heat races then will be guaranteed a front row grid slot, and that will be the focus here. Just waiting for Danny Williams on the outside of the front row to get his machine back started, and then we'll be ready to go. Watch for the battle of the 2 Catalan Championship regulars, Marc Seto and Eric Reverte on gates 2 and 3. Pre-race favourite very much Gary Birtwistle, the championship leader, unbeaten from 5 rounds thus far. We are underway with heat number 1. Flying start actually from Danny Williams off gate number 4, but it is Gary Birtwistle who claims the whole shot. See what Williams can do with his momentum going the long way around the outside. They're 3 abreast down the back straight and into the top bend. Eric Reverte coming through up the inside of Marc Seto with the cutback coming off turn number 2. So Reverte now up into 2nd position, finished 1 place behind Marc Seto in qualifying, but is a place ahead of him here. Races on further back down the order for 4th position. Danny Williams was a fast starter, but Fergus Bluff is closing him down, preferring the inside on the pit's bend and coming through nice and smoothly. So that's some good work from Fergus Bluff, who put in his new best result as a pro rider last time out in the Amman Valley with 5th position finish in round number 5. Didn't have a good qualifying earlier on today, down in 19th position. He's certainly making up for that here. He's gained a place by coming through on Danny Williams, and that's for 4th position. The field up at the head of the field at very least, well spread out now. Gary Birtwistle on his way to a first race victory of the day, and the job as far as confirming that championship success will be in the semi-finals. If he can book his place in today's grand final, that will be good enough for Gary Birtwistle. He could also do it in the last chance qualifier should that be required. Birtwistle, though, well on his way towards yet another heat victory, and the race is further down the order for 4th position. Fergus Bluff versus Danny Williams, and Tim Gregg also beginning to close the pair of them down. Returned to the DTRA last season after a 6-year absence from the series. The World Championship regular then, creeping round the curb on turn 3 and 4, but it looks as though Danny Williams has got enough in hand, so there's going to be no last-minute change of position. It's Gary Birtwistle who takes the checkered flag. 3.3 seconds in the end clear of Eric Reverte, who takes 2nd place away from Marc Seto, so improving his stock based on his seeding position in qualifying. 4th place going to Fergus Bluff. Big result from him. Remember, he only qualified in 19th position, so he'll be satisfied with P4. Danny Williams and Tim Gregg trying to close him down late on, but to no avail. Rick Owen and Joe Brindley rounding out your finishers in the opening race of the day here in Redcar.
Former winner here at Redcar back in 2019, Ferran Sastre, who will head
on now to Heat 2, and a welcome return to the lineup here for Ferran Sastre, who was forced to sit out the visit to the Amman Valley in favour of the first round of the 2022 World Championship in Diedenbergen in Germany. Fellow DTRA regulars Jack Bell and Tim Gregg are Great Britain's representatives in that FIM series, so of course they also missed the trip to South Wales. Sastre will start from the pole here, alongside him Alan Birtwistle, Charlie Kelly and Stephen Gurnhill on the front row. Row 2 is comprised of Freddie Trott Jr., Kevin Kennedy, Peter Kimber and Guy Horner. The starting marshal is moving away then. Watch for the two riders off the two inside starting positions. Sastra's missed the start off the pole, and it's Alan Birtwistle, the first to show. The number 30 hits the front and begins to power away. Sastra having to work hard there to move Stephen Gurnhill out of the way. Gurnhill making a good jump on the outside of the front row, and he's managed to leapfrog Charlie Kelly. So the race now is on for third position. Good start as well from Peter Kimber further back. And Kimber, who only qualified 20th earlier on this afternoon, has made a good start and on the opening lap sat up in 5th position, still holding that place for now. Meanwhile, for third, Charlie Kelly squeezes alongside Stephen Gurnhill and moves him out of the way. So at the end of the second lap, Charlie Kelly has managed to reassert himself in that third place. And the attack now and the focus is on the battle for 5th position. Freddie Trott Jr. then moved well out of the way by Peter Kimber. And Freddie Trott Jr., who has been a point scorer in each of the opening 5 rounds this series so far, has had to work hard there for 5th position in his opening ride of the day. Moves Peter Kimber out of the way. That's an opportunity for Kevin Kennedy to find his way past. So the 8 riders in this heat now are back in the order in which they qualified. Ferran Sastra, the only exception, as he attempts to close down Alan Birtwistle in the latter stages, but that looks largely in vain. Birtwistle, having made the initial jump, has been able to ride a smooth race and is looking good now as they come into the final lap. Ferran Sastra, remember, a runner-up to Gary Birtwistle in each of the opening 2 rounds of this season, was a 2019 winner here in Redcar, so he knows the fast way around this place. He can't get on terms with Alan Birtwistle in the pair's opening ride. And Alan Birtwistle, who qualified 5th and 3 places behind Ferran Sastra, has managed to beat him in their first matchup here in heat number 2. So it was always likely to be the battle to watch there, Birtwistle versus Sastra, and it's Alan Birtwistle who comes out on top to take first blood. So it's Gary Birtwistle who took heat 1, Alan Birtwistle in heat 2. Ferran Sastra suffers his first defeat of the day. Third place going the way of Charlie Kelly after he found his way through on Stephen Gurnhill. Freddie Trott Jr. and Kevin Kennedy both also forced to work hard to get through on Peter Kimber for 5th and 6th positions respectively. Lining up for heat number 3 in the pits, and Jack Bell will be the rider to lead them out onto track as he makes his return to DTRA action for the first time since round number 3. As I've mentioned previously, the opening round of the World Championship taking place the same day as round 4 of the DTRA series in the Amman Valley. Jack Bell acquitting himself well though out in Diedenbergen, finished in 14th position. Tim Gregg, the other British DTRA regular, coming home in 25th place. Ferran Sastra, as a point of comparison, finished 2nd place last time out in Heat 2. He finished as high as 4th position in the German round of the World Championship. Heat number 3 with Jack Bell, Conrad Little, Neil McQueen and Paul Young on the front row. Jake Eady, Mark Richardson, Tom Busfield, the last rider, into position, and Rob Cooling going off row 2. The 2 riders off the 2 inside gates here on the front row qualified in 3rd and 4th position, so evenly matched. We'll see how they get on in the run down to turn 1. Again, it is evenly matched between the 2 of them. Very level break actually between the 3 riders off the 3 inside gates. Neil McQueen, though, has now been left by the top 2. Conrad Little powered clear down the back straight, but he's got company on the inside around turns 3 and 4 from Jack Bell. It's Conrad Little who leads at the end of the opening lap, sitting currently in 4th position in the championship and just a single point behind Paul Young. He's hoping to make up here today, and Young's a little bit further down the order in their opening matchup of the afternoon as Conrad Little overlocks there coming around turns 3 and 4. That hands the impetus and the race lead to Jack Bell. We caught a glimpse there of Paul Young scrapping it out now for 3rd position. That's against Neil McQueen. McQueen holding firm on the number 7, the number 75 of Paul Young, a podium finisher on both days in the Amman Valley, rounds 4 and 5 of the 2022 Championship. Missed the opening round of this season though, so has had a little bit of catching up to do, but has certainly made up for lost time in South Wales at the mid-season phase, and now he'll be defending a place on the championship podium. Paul Young just overlocking there slightly, coming off turn number 4. Top 2 very much breaking away, so this is the race for the remainder for 3rd position, and Neil McQueen now looks to have it settled ahead of Paul Young. So good ride up at the head of the field from Jack Bell, just perseverance really on the inside. Conrad Little making the early break but leaving the door wide open on the inside line, and Little able to exploit it. Paul Young getting close again there to the tail of Neil McQueen around turns 1 and 2, but I don't think he's going to have enough time or be quite close enough. Jack Bell in the end winning it by a country mile. Second place to Conrad Little, who provided some entertainment in the early running by making the jump and going around the outside, coming off turn number 2. And then from there the race was for third position. Neil McQueen successfully defending it ahead of Paul Young and Mark Richardson. Richardson made a decent jump, and he was in a 3-rider battle early on for third position, but later slipped back. Fifth position he's able to hold on to ahead of Jake Eadie, Tom Busfield and Rob Cooling. Your finishers there for heat number 3. Fine start to proceedings this afternoon for Jack Bell.
Jack Bell, Conrad Little, Neil McQueen, Paul Young. Rest up to go, 8, 4, 5.
Back-to-back rides now for Mark Richardson and Rob Cooling, who re-emerge out onto the circuit for heat number 4. So the top 4 from each of the opening 3 races of the day already have their grid position settled for the semi-final stages. Now the focus will be on the top 2 in each of the next 2 races, who will earn a grid slot on the second row for each of the semi-finals. The remaining riders will qualify to the semi-final stages, as we've explained previously, but will have to go off the back row of the grid, which makes their chances of getting a top 5 finish that much more remote. So the top 2 here very much in focus. Poor start there off the inside gate from Mark Richardson, and it's Kevin Kennedy who is the first to show off gate number 2. So Mark Richardson, the highest ranked of the riders appearing in these heats 4 and 5, currently 8th in the championship after his big score at his local venue of Kings Lynn earlier on in this campaign. Has got some work to do if he wants to try and chase down Tim Gregg there in second position and earn a slot on the second row of the grid for the semi-final stages. He charges hard in towards turn number 3. Peter Kimber has once again made a good jump, and Mark Richardson will scythe down the inside now, coming in towards turn number 1 and move Peter Kimber out of the way and through for third position. Now he's got plenty of ground to cover against Tim Gregg, who was 6th position in heat number 1, but he's looking good for a top 2 finish here to book himself a place on the second row of the grid for the semi-final stages. Richardson is making up ground, but is he making it up quickly enough? It doesn't look like it for the moment at least. So up at the head of the field, it is Kevin Kennedy, who finished 6th place in heat number 2, looking good for a first race victory of the afternoon here. This is Tim Gregg in second position. Hasn't been a great season for him with the DTRA. Of course, missed the visit to the Amman Valley for the World Championship, but had only scored 2 points in his previous appearance in 2022. And looks as though he's going to earn himself a place on the second row of the grid for the semi-final stages, but is losing ground here to Kevin Kennedy, who stretches his lead up at the head of the field. Kevin Kennedy, who of course made his debut with the DTRA last season in the rookie class, only lasted 1 round in the rookie class before he stepped up because he was victorious on his debut, and has since been an intermediate class regular. And he gets off to a decent start here this afternoon with a 6th place in his opening ride and a victory there in heat number 4 that puts him on the second row of the grid for the semi-final stages, along with Tim Gregg. That's going to leave Mark Richardson on the back row of the grid for his semi-final appearance. Peter Kimber alongside him. Likewise, Rick Owen and Rob Cooling completing your finishers there in heat number 4.
Winning heat number 4 goes to 775, Kevin Kennedy. Tim Gregg leading all the way. Mark Richardson missing out at the start, he fights back to third.
Heat 5, the last of the preliminary races to settle the grid positions for the semi-final stages here in Redcar. And the biggest name in this one, Heat 5, is Freddie Trott Jr., currently 11th in the championship. He's been a finalist in 3 of the 5 rounds thus far in 2022. He's got the pole here, alongside him Danny Williams, Jake Eadie and Tom Busfield, Guy Horner and Joseph Brindley completing your 6-rider field. Jake Eadie, perhaps the rider to watch here, a relative newcomer, but already a front runner among the intermediate riders. We'll see what he can do here off at gate number 3. Another fast start from Danny Williams, made a good jump in his opening ride as well, and it's a fast enough start that he's able to shuffle up Jake Eadie. The cutback coming off turn 2 is with Tom Busfield, and the race here is for third position. Remember, it's the top 2 places that are in focus for a grid slot on the second row for the semi-final stages. And at the moment, the 2 riders who were top seeds from the opening 3 heats of the day are looking set to hold on to those top 2 positions here. Freddie Trott Jr., who was 5th in heat number 2, and Danny Williams, who was 5th in his opening ride as well, heat number 1. It's Freddie Trott Jr. who is now pulling away, and Danny Williams beginning to come under some pressure from Jake Eadie. Eadie with the cutback here off turn 2, gets the power down nicely down the back straight, and wrestles second position away from the fast-starting Danny Williams, who dropped out of those top 4 positions in his opening ride. He's looking to get his way onto the second row of the grid here, and a robust defence of that second place sees him force Jake Eadie out of the way, coming back into turns 1 and 2. So Eadie initially made the pass, Williams dug deep and found something extra, and has now managed to extend an advantage away from Jake Eadie. So good ride there from Danny Williams, and I think that all but settles this one down. Heat number 5 is going to go the way of Freddie Trott Jr. Second place will go to Danny Williams, who has now seen off the attentions of Jake Eadie. Strong ride in the first half of this race though from Eadie, who was 6th in his opening ride, heat number 3, and is looking good for a 3rd position finish here. It's only going to be good enough though for a place on the back row of the grid in semi-final 2. Freddie Trott wins it then, and fairly comfortably in the end, having well and truly pulled clear of Danny Williams. Williams with another fast start, but lost out to Freddie Trott Jr. in the run down towards turn number 1. They were 3 abreast going into that first bend, and Williams' decent jump forcing Jake Eadie out of the way somewhat coming off turn 2, and Tom Busfield was also able to come through initially for 3rd position. Eadie then recovering from 4th to 2nd, only for Danny Williams to fight his way back past, book his place on the second row of the grid for the semi-final stages alongside Freddie Trott Jr. Jake Eadie, Joe Brindley, Tom Busfield and Guy Horner, the eventual finishing order behind them. They will all feature on the back row of the grid for the semi-finals coming up next. 24 riders in today's field. They've now been split over 2 semi-finals and 3 rows of the grid for each of them. But this is where the action hots up, where the elimination phase begins. Last place in these 2 semi-finals will be ruled out of further participation. They'll be classified 23rd and 24th. The top 5 from each of these 2 semi-finals will go direct to today's grand final. Riders in between will have to chance their arm in the last chance qualifier, but there are only 2 spots out of 12 up for grabs from that one, so the ideal is to make it through safely inside those top 5 positions. Jack Bell, Ferran Sastre, Eric Reverte and Charlie Kelly go on the front row for semi-final 1. Mark Seto, Paul Young, Kevin Kennedy and Danny Williams line up on row 2. Mark Richardson, Joseph Brindley, Rick Owen and Guy Horner complete the field. Fine start off gate number 2. Ferran Sastre gets the whole shot. Jack Bell, the only previous heat winner in this lineup for semi-final 1, took heat number 3, but has been edged out in the early stages by Ferran Sastre, who was defeated by Alan Birtwistle first time out in heat 2. The action further back down the order at the moment. Charlie Kelly defending that 5th position, the last of the transfer spots, but he's going to have some company further back down the order here, because a little mistake there from Eric Reverte coming off turn number 2, and that's put the number 68 right back in the path of the number 11. It is Paul Young who capitalises to move up into 3rd place. Remember, the top 2 in each of these 2 semi-finals will be guaranteed their place on the front row of the grid for the grand final. 3rd and 4th positions will go onto the 2nd row of the grid, and then 5th place, of course, onto the back row with the 2 last chance qualifiers. Closing up at the head of the field here, Ferran Sastre versus Jack Bell for top spot, and supremacy in the first semi-final could be worth first gate choice for the grand final. So although both of these riders will progress safely through to the final and on the front row of the grid as well, there is something worth fighting for here in terms of seeding position. And Ferran Sastre looking for his first race victory of the afternoon here in Redcar. Currently has top spot ahead of Jack Bell on the number 93, pursuing him closely in now to the latter stages. Paul Young keeping up a good pace. This is more like it from him. Beaten by Neil McQueen last time out in Heat 3. He was also behind Jack Bell and Conrad Little. He did manage to transfer direct to the semi-final. He's going to move direct to the grand final here this afternoon as well. Ferran Sastre takes it, but not for the want of trying from Jack Bell. And behind them, Paul Young keeping up a good pace, as I've said. Eric Reverte with a small error in the early stages, but holds on to 4th position. And Charlie Kelly is the other rider to make direct transfer. Danny Williams, try though he might in the early stages, just couldn't find a way through. And Williams will once again have to go the hard way. He's going to be one of the busiest riders of the afternoon by the looks of things, having already appeared twice in the opening round. He's going to appear twice in this second round as well. Ferran Sastre by less than 0.2 of a second ahead of Jack Bell. Paul Young also within a second of that top 2. Competitive start to the semi-final stages with Sastre ahead of Bell. Marching on to the front row of the grid for today's grand final. Paul Young and Eric Reverte will appear on row 2. Charlie Kelly the last of the automatic transfers from semi-final 1. The second semi-final now being sent out onto track, and this one provides us with an interesting matchup between Gary and Alan Birtwistle, winners of Heats 1 and 2. But all the focus here will be on the shoulders of Gary Birtwistle. A top 5 finish in this second semi-final. He'll be through direct to today's grand final. That will guarantee him the single championship points he needs in order to become UK national champion for the first time. Alan Birtwistle it is who'll have the inside start position, the winner of Heat 2 ahead of Ferran Sastre. Gary Birtwistle goes off gate 2, the winner of Heat 1 ahead of Eric Reverte. It's Conrad Little and Neil McQueen who finished in second and third positions in Heat 3 who complete the front row. The second row of the grid, Stephen Gurnhill, Fergus Bluff, Freddie Trott Jr. and Tim Gregg, Jake Eady, Peter Kimber, Tom Busfield and Rob Cooling completing the lineup. Watching Gary Birtwistle here off gate number 2, bidding to become UK national champion for the first time. He hasn't made a good start. It is Alan Birtwistle who gets the whole shot and Conrad Little coming around the outside of him. Gary Birtwistle gets his wheels in line nicely though, coming off turn 2 and fires through into second place. And now the pursuit of top spot begins. Birtwistle inside those top 5 spaces. He needs to confirm this national title. He's not going to want to do it with a whimper. He'll want to do it in style, and in order to do that, he's going to have to pick off his brother, Alan Birtwistle. This is the fight for 5th position. Up ahead of them, Neil McQueen, the number 7, looks settled in 4th place. So it's a head-to-head between Freddie Trott Jr. and Stephen Gurnhill. Gurnhill has the shorter route around the inside. Freddie Trott Jr. I thought was clear there going into turn 1, but couldn't quite get the power down going off turn number 2. And Stephen Gurnhill riding a good defensive line here on the inside, and he stretched a bike and a half ahead now of Freddie Trott Jr. And Tim Gregg actually keeping up a good pursuit directly behind here, currently in 7th place. So a 3-rider squabble now over P5 as Gary Birtwistle gets up right alongside Alan Birtwistle for top spot in semi-final 2. And Gary Birtwistle finally shakes off his brother, and the number 30, himself a former champion of course in both 2016 and 2017, has now been passed by the champion-elect of 2022, Gary Birtwistle, well on his way towards securing that crown. So it's Gary Birtwistle who leads semi-final 2, Alan Birtwistle in 2nd, Conrad Little in 3rd, then it's Neil McQueen ahead of Stephen Gurnhill. Gurnhill now has dropped Freddie Trott Jr. into the path of Tim Gregg, and that's a race for 6th position. That's only going to determine grid position for the last chance qualifier, and there's no change in the latter stages, with Freddie Trott Jr. holding on and Tim Gregg restricted behind him. Those two will meet again in the last chance qualifier up next. But in the meanwhile, it's glory for Gary Birtwistle. He's through to today's grand final. He is UK flat track national champion for the first time. He was 3rd in 2018, 4th in 2019. Missed out on a title bid last season as a result of a broken scaphoid, and he's made up for it in 2022. Gary Birtwistle takes 2 wins out of 2 this afternoon in Redcar to seal his national title with 2 races to spare here in the South Tees Motorsports Park. 2nd place behind him, Alan Birtwistle. He'll go onto the front row of the grid for today's grand final. Conrad Little and Neil McQueen onto row 2. Stephen Gurnhill, the last of those automatic transfers to the top 12 today. 10 riders already through to the 6th final of this 2022 series. 2 more will join them from the last chance qualifier, but there are 12 candidates, and I tell you what, there are plenty of riders in this last chance qualifier who will fancy their chances here. On the inside 2 starting positions, having finished 6th place in the 2 semi-finals, Freddie Trott Jr. and Danny Williams. 7th place last time out, Tim Gregg and Mark Seto alongside them. 2nd row of the grid, Fergus Bluff, Kevin Kennedy, who finished 8th, Jake Eady and Mark Richardson, who were 9th in their semis. Back row of the grid, Peter Kimber and Rick Owen, who were 10th, Tom Busfield and Joe Brindley, who were both 11th. We've already seen the elimination of Guy Horner in semi-final 1 and Rob Cooling in semi-final 2, and 10 riders will join them on the bench ahead of today's grand final. The whole shot is with Tim Gregg. Gregg is the first to show, the World Championship regular, pursued early on by Mark Seto, trying to go the long way round on the pit's bend, and Mark Seto just on the edge of that darker dirt berm there manages to fire himself through to the front, almost as if he's on rails. Good ride from the debutant Mark Seto, who was 3rd in his opening outing behind Gary Birtwistle and Eric Reverte, and missed out in semi-final 1 down in 7th position, but looks set to make up for it here and book his place on the back row of the grid for the grand final. Now the race is between Tim Gregg and Freddie Trott Jr. Gregg, who hasn't made the final in his 3 previous appearances in 2022, the opening rounds of this 2022 campaign, rounds 1 to 3, before he sat out Amman Valley in favour of a visit to Diedenbergen. But he is in line to qualify through to the grand final here in Redcar as he defends second place against Freddie Trott Jr. Freddie Trott Jr., who's been in 3 of the 5 finals thus far, looking to make it 4, and he squeezes through up the inside coming off turn 4. So Tim Gregg was picked off in the early stages by Mark Seto around the outside on that top end, and now he's been done by Freddie Trott Jr. on the inside. Gregg down to 3rd position, still set to score points for the first time since the opening round of the campaign at the Greenfield TT. Because remember, the top 3 non-qualifiers from this last chance qualifier will score 3, 2 and 1 championship points respectively. So at the moment, that's Tim Gregg who will score 3 points for 3rd position. Behind him, it is Jake Eady in a pretty comfortable 4th place, and crossing the line now for 5th and the last of the championship points on offer here in Redcar, Danny Williams. So Kevin Kennedy will miss out on points, as will Fergus Bluff, and that's something of a surprise given the way he performed at the Amman Valley last time out with 19 points over the 2 rounds. He's not going to add to that tally here this afternoon. Probably the biggest name eliminated from that last chance qualifier, Fergus Bluff down in 7th place. Kevin Kennedy's also been a regular scorer, at level actually on points with Fergus Bluff, and he too is eliminated down in 6th place and without being able to add to his championship score. Seto and Freddie Trott Jr. marching on, Tim Gregg, Jake Eady and Danny Williams adding to their championship tallies. Look at the lineup for this grand final, and as you can see, a change to the seedings. Charlie Kelly has elected to sit this one out, and Tim Gregg will come in as a substitute. Must admit, I haven't ever seen that before in similar situations in the past, and I suspect an error from race direction. But Gregg, eliminated last time out, comes in effectively as a lucky loser, and Charlie Kelly, who made the top 12 by right, will have to be demoted to 13th. Riders making their selections then for this grand final. First onto track will be Gary Birtwistle, the top seed, winner of Heat 1 and also semi-final 2. Just digging around on the inside, but he's now moved over towards gate number 3. So it looks as though Gary Birtwistle has opted for gate 3. Ferran Sastre is your 2nd seed. He was runner-up to Alan Birtwistle in Heat 2, but got back to winning ways with victory ahead of Jack Bell in a close finish to semi-final 1. So 2nd seed for Ferran Sastre. He's gone for gate 4. That will leave Alan Birtwistle with a choice between the 2 inside gates, and he's going to renew his rivalry here with Gary Birtwistle from semi-final 2. Of course, Alan Birtwistle, the early leader of that race before Gary found his way through later on. They're going to be going off gates 2 and 3. Alan on the inside of Gary. And the pole is left for Jack Bell, who completes the front row. Bell, the winner of Heat 3, but finished 2nd and runner-up to Ferran Sastre in semi-final 1. Conrad Little finished 2nd to Jack Bell in Heat 3. He was 3rd behind Gary Birtwistle and Alan Birtwistle in semi-final 2. He's the first of the riders to choose on the 2nd row of the grid, and he's gone for gate 4. Neil McQueen on the number 7 slots in on the inside of him. Paul Young goes for gate 2, and that leaves the inside start position for Eric Reverte. Reverte just asking Neil McQueen the procedure here, because of course up until now in Reverte's first appearance, the grid positions have been determined in seeding order, so the top seed with the inside and so on, but for the grand final it's an open pick in seeding order. So Reverte makes it out onto the track, and he's left with the inside gate on that 2nd row, and the riders choosing now for the back row of the grid. We've got Stephen Gurnhill, who was 5th in semi-final 2. He's the first to choose on the back row. Of course, Charlie Kelly from semi-final 1 has elected not to line up in this grand final, so Tim Gregg takes his place, and it's going to be the inside of the back row. Freddie Trott Jr., Stephen Gurnhill and Mark Seto then in that order will complete the field. Favourites for the podium places on the front row: Jack Bell, Alan Birtwistle, Gary Birtwistle, Ferran Sastre. The 6th grand final of this 2022 campaign here in Redcar. Can Gary Birtwistle maintain his unbeaten run? He's made a fast jump, gets a fair amount of lift in the run down towards turn number 1, but squeezes between Jack Bell and Ferran Sastre to hit the front down the back straight. Bell is out-muscled now, going into turn 3 by Sastre, but Bell has the inside, the shorter route into that 3rd turn, and Sastre now has to cut back for it. Start of the 2nd lap. three riders now dicing over second position as Alan Birtwistle comes lunging down the inside of Jack Bell, and Bell has gone from second to fourth, and all of this action has enabled Gary Birtwistle to begin to streak away up at the head of the field, and Bell coming under further pressure now, having already lost 2 positions, with Conrad Little right on his tail. Little, who of course kept up a good pursuit on the tail of Jack Bell, first time they met in heat number 3. Looks like he's going to try and take this one to the wire as well, but it's not going to be for a podium spot unless something changes up at the head of the field. Gary Birtwistle, winner in 5 rounds out of 5 so far in 2022, looking set to make it 6. Alan Birtwistle has joined him on the podium in each of the last 4 rounds and currently sits in 3rd position. Jack Bell is still close to his tail. Ferran Sastre between them, an isolated 2nd position now. And Bell coming back into this race as it goes on. He's dropped Conrad Little. Little coming into the path now of Paul Young. This is the battle for 5th position. Eric Reverte in 7th place, so it's a 3-rider scrap now for 5th. 15 laps, of course, in the grand final, as Reverte again tries to get alongside Paul Young, but Young's got a really good exit coming off turn 2, narrows that gap to less than a bike length going into the top bend on Conrad Little. Each time he moves up to the dirt, though, Young is leaving himself exposed to attack from Eric Reverte behind. We've got a faller on the racing line. They're continuing on under yellow flags for the moment. We'll pick out who that is. I think that's Marc Seteau. Marc Seteau has gone down on turn number 1, and now the red flags are shown. Before they come back past him again, the red flags are shown, and we were only part way through. We're not going to be able to declare a result based on those completed laps. We are going to have a restart, and Gary Birtwistle is going to have to do it all over again. Marc Seteau going down on turn 1, and he was prone right on the racing line as well, or just a little bit off it. And initially continuing under yellow flags, no passing on that corner. But finally, the referee has decided to bring a premature halt to that grand final. We'll have to do it all over again. Riders already slotting in a line-out situation, as they were at the time of the stoppage. Gary Birtwistle, next to him, Ferran Sastre. Behind him, Alan Birtwistle. They were in line to add to their podium tallies for 2022. Of course, Ferran Sastre, who was the runner-up to Gary Birtwistle in the opening 2 rounds of this 2022 campaign, clashed with Birtwistle and found himself disqualified in Kings Lynn, which is where the bulk of the championship deficit has come from. Jack Bell also fell in the grand final in Kings Lynn, and then Sastre and Bell both missing the trip to Amman Valley with World Championship commitments. That's what's left them. Ferran Sastre currently 6th in the UK national standings, and Jack Bell directly behind him in 7th place. Riders settling in then for a second time of asking at the grand final. It's a line out. Riders staggered from outside to in and then back towards the outside once they reach the inner curb. And it will be Gary Birtwistle who will lead them away. Unbeaten in 2 rides so far this afternoon. The only unbeaten rider in this programme. Sastre, Birtwistle and Bell, also race winners. They are your 4 men who lined up on the front row of the grid. They are now the top 4 in this line-out. Jack Bell looking to get off to a better start this time around. Remember, he dropped from 2nd to 4th places. Marshall's just moving the riders into position a little bit further back. Looks as though Tim Gregg was out of position, but he's now got himself correctly lined up just on the outside of Neil McQueen. Adjusting the bike further, Tim Gregg. Made a decent start, actually. Fortunate to be in this race, you'd have to say, having finished 3rd in the last chance qualifier. He's made up a few positions already from that back row of the grid. We'll see what he can do here. Certain for his best result of 2022. As the lights go out then on the restart, and it's a good jump from Alan Birtwistle, and he gets up alongside Ferran Sastre in towards turn number 1. So capitalising on the line out there, Alan Birtwistle, and it's Gary and Alan who lead at the head of the field. Sastre squeezing through down the inside into turn 3. Alan Birtwistle tries to run for the dirt, but Sastre's got his nose in front at the start of the 2nd lap now of this restart. Jack Bell on the tail again of Alan Birtwistle, was beginning to close him down at the time of the red flag. See if he can make an impression earlier on this time around. Of course, it's only the remaining laps of this grand final that will be completed now, as Paul Young darts to the outside line on Conrad Little. The action is resumed in the race for 5th position. Marc Seteau having been relegated to the back of the line out, trying to thread his way through the field. Bit of a break in the group here. We've got the top 8 who've stretched an advantage over the rest as Eric Reverte tries to get through now on Paul Young. This is a scrap, remember, for 6th position as Young now goes wide on turns 3 and 4, and that's what I was worried about in the initial running, that Young charging for back wheels on the tail of Conrad Little was going to leave himself vulnerable to Eric Reverte, and Reverte was that much closer in the restart to pick up the pieces. And now he's going after Conrad Little for 5th place. And will get through for 5th place if Little isn't very careful. He had a momentary bobble there on the top bend, Conrad Little. Little 4th in the championship, of course, directly behind Paul Young, who is 3rd, only a point behind him. And at the moment, this works out very nicely for Conrad Little. He's got Eric Reverte between himself and Young. Reverte, though, this time makes the error on turn 3 and 4, and Young almost alongside. Good action right the way through the field, as ever, with the DTRA. Reverte now defending 6th place. Paul Young in 7th. Neil McQueen keeping a watching brief in 8th as the leaders now come into the final lap. Gary Birtwistle has got this one settled ahead of Ferran Sastre. Alan Birtwistle still defending against Jack Bell for 3rd position. Gary Birtwistle then looking set to make it 6 wins out of 6 for 2022. Birtwistle victorious once again. Confirms himself as champion, and on the same day he extends his winning run. 2nd place to Ferran Sastre. Great to have him back with the DTRA. He's provided good competition to Birtwistle here this afternoon. But Birtwistle's early lead in the initial running giving him the head start on the line out. And that was enough for him to make it 3 wins out of 3 here at the Echo Arena this afternoon, and confirm his 6th win of this 2022 campaign. 2nd place again for Ferran Sastre. 3rd time this season he has finished 2nd to Gary Birtwistle, and it's Alan Birtwistle who completes the podium, so maintaining his podium run. That's now 5 rounds in succession for Birtwistle, who all but confirms 2nd place in the championship for 2022. Good action behind as well. We saw in the battle for 5th position Conrad Little holding on ahead of Eric Reverte and Paul Young, and that means that Little will move above Paul Young in the championship standings. But Paul Young, with the drop round regulations, will be set to benefit after missing the opening round of this 2022 season. We'll see how that all shakes down in just a couple of moments' time. Confirmed result, the grand final. Gary Birtwistle taking the 20 championship points. Ferran Sastre in 2nd. Alan Birtwistle 3rd. Jack Bell in 4th, ahead of Conrad Little, who holds on in a separate battle between positions 5 to 8. Tim Gregg, for the record, won the battle further down the order ahead of Mark Seteau, who recovered from the back of the grid on the line out to take 10th place ahead of Stephen Gernhill and Freddie Trott Jr. So just 9 points now separate 3 riders in the battle for 3rd overall. Conrad Little moves ahead of Paul Young, while Ferran Sastre jumps Neil McQueen and moves 5th. Alan Birtwistle can only be caught now with a win for Little at the remaining round, so he looks settled in 2nd, making it a Birtwistle 1-2 in 2022. An end-of-season party for them on the horizon at the Greenfield Oval, which will now be the venue for Gary Birtwistle's first outing as national champion in a month and a half's time.